Let's just build some multi-agents. Until now, we only used the single agent workflow in order to build our AI agents and in order to build RAG applications. But we have also the possibility to use multi-agents. I want to show you briefly what I mean, and then we will build it immediately. So until now we have a structure that is something like this. We have one single agent, and this agent has access to different tools. It can use different APIs, the internet access, the Windows buffer memory, write files, and it has of course direct technology. So we have basically built out something like Andrew Karpathy tells us. Andrew Karpathy tells us that LLMs are something like the new operating system, and on the LLM runs everything that we want. We can browse the internet. We can use different tools like calculator and so on. We can write different files, we can read different files, we have the vector store with our embeddings and so on. But right now, just one single LLM works here. But you can see that an LLM can also talk to other LLMs. So let's just talk about multi-agents. And also here Andrew Karpathy has a nice graphic. Basically we can create a CEO, the CEO is an LLM, and also this CEO can have, for example, access to different tools. But most likely this CEO is especially there in order to tell its workers what they need to do. We can have, for example, a CFO, a CTO, a COO, a general counsel, and also these things can communicate with other people or with other LLMs, like for security, for VP engineering, the chief scientists and so on. And also these LLMs can once again communicate with other LLMs. You can spin this up as big as possible, and I want to give you a quick example how you can do something like this. These multi-agents are also really cool and powerful because we can also use different LLMs right here. Let's just come into this whiteboard once again what we have built until now. Until now we have one gigantic agent or one single LLM, let's just call it agent or also LLM. And this LLM has different tools. It has, for example, a vector database. It has, for example, internet access. It has, for example, different APIs over Compose.io. It has, for example, the calculator and so on. And this agent needs to do everything on himself. He has no workers underneath him. But of course it could be really practical to have different workers. Now why is this? First let me show you how we can build this out. If we build an application where we have, for example, a CEO, so let's just call this LLM CEO, and this CEO has some workers. This CEO has, for example, a system prompt that tells the CEO, hey, you are responsible that the workers do their job. And then we can have, for example, worker 1, and the first worker could be, for example, a research agent. And this research agent can simply go on, search the web in order for the best information for different things. And here is something special. The CEO could have, for example, the brain of, let's just say, O3. Because it has a gigantic brain, it is really good in structuring data and give right rules. Then the research worker, here we could use, for example, something that is a little bit cheaper. So we could use, for example, or mini or whatever you want. Then we have another worker. And the other worker, the next worker, would be, for example, a creative writer. So let's just call it creative writer. And this LLM can also have, for example, another LLM as the brain. Here we could use, for example, Claude, because some people like Claude as a brain in order to write stuff. And then we could, for example, also have one last worker that is like, let's just say, the social media worker. So you could spin this however you want. This social media worker could have, for example, as the brain, let's just say 4.1, whatever you want. These are just generic examples, you need to play with this. And this last worker has also access to, let's just say, Instagram API to post the stuff. So what we have here is a lot of different LLMs that talk to each other. The CEO gets, for example, your query. So your query comes to the CEO, and your query would be, for example, search the news about Tesla, write a blog article for me and post it on Instagram. Then the CEO, with its big brain, has the capacity to process everything correct. It will give the first task to the first worker. The first worker will do research. As soon as we have all this research, the creative writer will get triggered, and the creative writer can write better because it uses Claude in the backbone. And O4 for the research. And they will also communicate all the time with the CEO, hey, my job is now done, and then the CEO will trigger the next worker, then this thing will communicate once again with the CEO, and then the CEO would trigger the last worker, and the last worker would write everything for Instagram and immediately post it, for example. This would be something that is really valuable with different LLMs that communicate with each other. And here you also have the possibility to give system prompts on every single LLM here, so that this thing also behaves exactly how you want. So you can give every single LLM a system prompt, and if you give these things a system prompt, of course, it's also logical that this thing will be specialized in their own task. It's just like in a company. In a company, there's not one person that does everything. There's not one person for accounting, for marketing, for sales, and so on. You have in every specific role one specific person that is tailored to this job. So the guy for marketing does only marketing because he's good in marketing. The guy for sales does only sales because he is good in sales. The guy for accountant does only accountant because he is good in accounting. And then, of course, the CEO manages these workers. So this is something that we can build also in Flowwise, and right now I want to show you how we can do this. All in all, we will get better quality. But still, don't sleep on this tool agent, because I think this is also a little bit more reliable from time to time, because the other workers, sometimes they stuck in a loop. But nonetheless, I want to show you how to build it. So don't sleep on this agent, but also try to work with multi-agents. So first, we can just save this thing up, we come back. Right now we come to agent flows, that's important. Then we press add new, and then we press plus once again, and we scroll down, of course, not to memory, but to multi-agents. And here you see we have supervisor and worker, and the supervisor is always the CEO. And you see what you need for the supervisor, a tool calling chat model, and then of course some workers. So actually let's just give our supervisor, our CEO, a brain, so we press plus. We need, of course, a chat model, and actually let's just use OpenAI as the brain for our first worker. So chat OpenAI. We connect, of course, the OpenAI node as the brain for our supervisor, for our CEO. Then we give the credentials, and obviously it's the RAG course credentials. And for the supervisor, we need to have a strong brain, so we could use GPT 4.1 would work. But what I want to try is O3 mini. You could also try O4 mini. Or 4.5 preview is a bit too expensive, 4.1 would work, but I just want to have O3 mini as the brain because it's really smart and it has test time compute, and I think this is perfect for our supervisor. Then we could use agent memory, we don't need it, and input moderation, we also don't need it. And here you also see that you can save stuff up in the cache, but more on this caching later. Just keep this in mind, we can also build RAG applications or something similar with the cache. But this is not for right now. What we need right now is, of course, different workers. So we come down and we use one worker, for example. As soon as you have one worker, you can duplicate them as much as you like. And we can simply connect the supervisor with this worker. So let's just say 1, 2, 3. And now we have the CEO, and the CEO right now has, for example, 3 different workers. As soon as you have your first structure, I would recommend you to save this up. So please just save it, and let's just call this, for example, multi-agent with RAG. We save it. Right now, the most important thing is, before we can give other LLMs and do fancy stuff, we need to have prompts. Actually, in this thing, prompt engineering is really important because you want to have every single worker nailed down to the task that it should do. If not, this thing behaves not how it should. And in order to do that, we can come actually back. You can come to the marketplace, and in the marketplace you can type in prompt engineering, for example, and you will find this prompt engineering team. And in this prompt engineering team, you can simply press use template. And this is a template that will generate stuff for you. You can simply see how it works, you get a nice description. So simply explain the app you want to create, and it will generate a system prompt for each worker. Example, I want to create an app with 2 AI agents. One agent would perform a Google search using SERP API tool and any topic provided by the user. The other agent would then send the information to my email, test@test.test, using a custom tool at its disposal. You can simply describe in this workflow what you want to build and you will get your prompts back. And actually here we have the same workflow with these multi-agents in order to craft our prompts. We have the prompt crafter and the prompt reviewer so that it will make sure that we get the right prompts. It will work over and over until we have really good structured prompts. You can actually press on it. You can simply connect your credentials like records and then you can save this. Let's just call it prompt engineering team. We save it and then we can chat with this thing and we can simply tell it what we want to have. Let's just actually make this big because here we get a lot of stuff back. I want to build an app with 3 workers. The first worker has access to a vector database and should search it for the topic of prompt engineering for LLMs and diffusion models. The second worker should have internet access via the Brave search tool. The third worker should write a detailed blog post with good structure and save it locally. So we have 3 different workers. The first worker is responsible for getting good information about prompt engineering for LLMs and diffusion models. You already know we have a vector database where this stuff is inserted, but of course you can insert in your vector database whatever you want. Then the second worker is simply here in order to search more information over the internet if you ask, for example, other questions. And then the third worker is perfectly for structuring blog posts, and these blog posts should get saved locally so that you can publish them later. Of course you can also connect an API via the Compose.io tool, but what I like to do is to save this stuff locally because if there are some failures in this article, I would not want to post it immediately on the internet. I like to have it locally so I can simply copy paste it. It's really better. So we can simply send this out. And then this thing will work over and over and over again. You see the supervisor triggers the prompt creator and gives this exact task. Then we get a prompt back for every single agent. Right now the supervisor triggers the prompt reviewer in order to see if the prompts are good or not. And then we will get good prompts back. And lastly, the supervisor checks once again if the prompts are good or not, and then we have basically everything included as we want. So we can simply copy these improved system prompts. I simply throw them into an empty text file that I make here right now on my PC. Let's just call it something, it doesn't really matter. I insert this stuff here, and these prompts, we can simply copy these prompts in our application. So let's just put this aside. We can actually close this down. You can also save it. So we come back, then we come to agent flows. We scroll down to our application, the multi-agent with RAG. And in this multi-agent with RAG, we can give these workers prompts. And also the name is important. So our first agent, the name is the vector database researcher. You can simply copy this name and we throw it in this name. And then you also get the system prompt. And we start with a role, then the goal, and then the instructions. And the annotations, you do not have to include them. So you would simply copy the system prompt until here. And you can also read the system prompt, but as soon as this is copied, you can simply make this stuff here back. We delete this thing and we insert this prompt. You are an expert in leveraging vector databases to extract relevant information on specific topics. Your task is to utilize the vector database to search for comprehensive data on prompt engineering for LLMs and diffusion models. Your role is crucial in gathering detailed insights and understanding the nuances of the topics. Goal: make a well-organized dataset and so on. This seems to be perfect. Then the instructions: use the vector database to find the relevant information, articles, papers, resources, and so on. This also seems to be fine. Avoid making assumptions, so please stick with the vector database. Produce a detailed report that includes diffusion, case studies, and so on. Pass the comprehensive dataset to the internet research specialist. So you see, we have every single thing in this prompt, and now we go on and we use the second worker. So the name of the second worker is the internet research specialist. We copy it, we give it the name, and then of course we come back and we also copy the system prompt until here. So let's just copy these, we come back, we make it big, we include it, and we save. You can read these prompts yourself if you want, just pause the video. And then the last thing, the agent 3, is the blog writer. We can copy this, we give it of course the name. We search once again the system prompt until here. We come in here, we make it big, and we insert it and press save. And then you can also come back here, edit the goal section to define the description outcome and so on, general enhancement, consistent and so on. So you see this is perfect. I think this should work. What we have to do right now is of course to give the right tools. Our first agent has of course our vector database as the tool. So we simply press plus. We need to come down to tools. We need of course the retriever tool. And we simply connect the retriever tool right here. And now we need to connect, of course, our vector database to this worker. So actually, let's just press plus, come to the vector databases, document store vector. We can include it, throw it on the retriever. And of course, right now we use the RAC course test so that we get everything back. Now we need to give this retriever a name and when it should get called. The name is prompting, for example, and the description. Use this tool to search info about diffusion and LLM prompting. And make sure to check if this thing is correct. You can also give here the description how the vector database is called, but let's just work with this right now because we don't want to have unnecessary tokens in these workers. I think this is fine. Then the second worker has of course internet access, so you press plus. We scroll down to tools once again. And we want to have the Brave Search API, just like we have told. We throw the tool on it, and then we connect the credentials that we already have with this RAC course. And the last thing should save stuff locally. So actually, let's just press plus once again. We come down to the tools, and we use the write file to disk, and we also connect the write file to disk. And please remember, if you want that you post immediately on social media, you can simply press on plus. You would use, for example, Compose.io. You connect your credentials, and in Compose.io you would, for example, search Facebook if you want to post on Facebook or Instagram or whatever. So you should simply build this out however you want. I just want to save it locally so that we don't have any messes in it. I want to post it manually if it's right, and if not, I can delete it. So let's just give the path here. I give the path once again to this PDF folder here, and now I press save. And if I start right now this thing here, you need to know that we have every single LLM with GPT-o3 Mini. So the supervisor will use o3 Mini, but also every single worker will use o3 Mini. This is also somehow fine if you want, but I don't like o3 Mini, for example, for creative writing. And if we want to write a blog post, we need to use creative writing. That's why I would press at least plus, come to chat models once again. In the last chat model, I want to use OpenRouter. We simply throw it on here. We connect OpenRouter as the tool calling chat model on our last worker. We give, of course, the credentials records because we already have included them. And here we need to give the name, for example, Claude 3.7 Sonnet, because this thing is great in order to write blog posts. So what we have here is o3 Mini as the brain and the CEO. Also the first worker, the research worker, uses o3 Mini. This is perfect for searching information in a vector database. Also the second worker with the Brave Search API is fine with o3 Mini. And the last worker uses, for example, Claude 3.7 Sonnet. If you want to work with cheaper models, of course, you can simply throw a free model from OpenRouter on one of these workers or on all of these workers. You can play with this around until you find the right model for your right worker in order to make this perfect. The last thing that we need to do is to come to the supervisor and here press on additional parameters. Here we have, for example, a nice little prompt, but we should make this a little bit better. We should tell this thing, for example, that it should use, for example, first the vector database researcher, then the internet researcher, and lastly the blog post writer in order to get the right information. So, for example, you have 3 workers. Use the vector database researcher to search info about prompting first, for example. Then use the, let's just see, agent 2 is called internet research specialist to search other topics. And lastly, use the blog post writer, is it called, always last after you have your info. So let's just save it. Now we make it small. I save it also here. And if I ask right now something about prompting, our supervisor will actually trigger our first worker. It will use our vector database. The info will come back to our supervisor once again, and then the supervisor should be smart enough that we should use right now the blog post writer, and we can actually skip the Brave Search API. Let's just see if this works or not. So how to write diffusion prompts? Let's just send it out. Our supervisor comes and triggers the vector database researcher. So this is perfect. Then we get all the information back. Now our supervisor will step in once again. There we have it. And it triggers the blog post writer, and we should get a perfectly structured blog post with Claude 3.7 Sonnet. And of course it should get saved locally. So there we have it, and also a nice summary. So let's just make it big in order to see if everything worked or not. So we started how to write diffusion prompts. The supervisor triggers the vector database researcher. It uses our vector database in order to get the most out of it. So you see, we should include like camera lenses and so on. Then we get all the information back. Then the supervisor comes here and uses the blog post writer. The blog post writer will write something right now and also use the write file in order to store everything locally on our own machine. And then the supervisor tells us all tasks are completed, conclude, and so on. It's finished. So we used the vector database and then the write file, and we have an in-depth detailed explanation on our local machine, saved up as prompt engineering blog post.md. Let's just see if this is true. There we have it. Prompt engineering blog post.md. And if I open this up, I have a detailed blog post about prompt engineering for diffusion prompt, and everything is in Markdown. So this is perfect. And if you do not like to have Markdown for your blog post, of course you can simply tell like use nice other formats, whatever you want. The art and science of prompt engineering, mastering LLM and diffusion models. In today's AI-driven landscape, the ability to effectively communicate with artificial intelligence has become an invaluable skill. At the heart of this communication lies prompt engineering, the craft of designing inputs that guide AI models to produce desired outputs. The blog post explores the nuances of prompt engineering into revolutionary AI techniques, AI technologies, large language models, and diffusion models based on image generation models, understanding prompt engineering, and so on. So you see, this is really perfect. Then a well-structured diffusion prompt typically consists of 4 key elements: the subject, the modifiers, the composition, the extra details. So all of it is perfect. We have a really detailed and nailed down article, and I think this is completely great. So our application works. Our supervisor was smart enough to trigger the right worker. The worker gives it back to the supervisor triggers the blog writer, and the blog writer writes everything on our local machine. Now let's just ask something else, because we want to check if we can also search the internet. So let's just clear this. Clear. We make it big once again. And now I ask something like search the Tesla news and write a blog post, of course. Now the supervisor triggers once again the research specialist. We get some infos back, and right now we are done. So let's just see. Actually, this was a big task. Okay, and I need to tell you something. I have messed up. We have once again content on prompt engineering. Now why is this? I will tell you exactly why. Because I have not paid enough attention to the prompt of the second worker. The Brave Search API worker also always searches stuff about prompt engineering. And we should include topic here, because we don't want to actually search more information about prompt engineering, because we have our vector database for these. Right now this thing should be perfect. Save it up once again. And also in the last worker you need to check this. I have simply added here topic once again, and also here topic, so no longer just diffusion and LLM prompting. So let's just save it also here, and actually test it out once again. We include, for example, right now this prompt once again: search the Tesla news and write a blog post. I send it out. Right now, hopefully, our supervisor triggers the internet research specialist. This seems to work, and this thing should give us all the stuff about, of course, the Tesla news. Then the supervisor triggers the blog post writer and we hopefully get back everything locally on our own machine as a nice little article that we can publish somehow if we really want to. And there we have it. Everything is saved locally and the supervisor tells me that it's done. So we used the Brave Search API. We searched for the news about Tesla. We searched on the tesla.com blog and so on. And we used the right file. And here you have some points. Actually, it is stored on our machine on the right file. So Tesla news blog post.md. Let's just open this up. There we have it. It is perfectly structured. Leadership and community with some speculations. Recent week have seen discussions about Tesla's leadership and so on. And we have some rumors that potentially the CEO Elon Musk should get replaced by another CEO, and that's at least what the board said. Of course, this was only rumors, and I can assure you these rumors were false, but nonetheless, these are the news. Actually, if you search Tesla News new CEO, you find an article 56 minutes ago that Tesla shared the nice plans to look for new CEO. And 3 hours ago on Sky News there was an article that the Tesla board members want to replace Elon Musk. So you see, these are the news. We have a perfect article and we have of course also stuff about the robotaxi development, about the entry-level electric vehicles and so on. So this thing works. I think we have a really good application. It is especially good because we use for the research the O3. This is perfect in order to search our vector database, to search in the internet and so on. And for writing detailed descriptive articles, Claude 3.7 Sonnet is actually a lot better. That's why we use this model. And every single worker is only here to do one specific thing, and because it only needs to do one thing, it can do this specific thing a lot better than an agent that needs to do everything. So please remember, this is a nice format and you can build with this out whatever you want. You can give access to different tools on every single worker. You can also give more tools if you really need to. You can give a detailed system prompt. You need to give the supervisor a detailed system prompt. You can give different chat LLM models so that you can use the model that is perfect for that specific worker. And of course, more on this cache later. And that's basically everything that you need to know about the multi-agent systems here, and you can build every single AI agent that you want. So have fun with this thing, and what I want to do right now is of course to press save, press here on it, export agent, so that you can also play with this format a tiny bit for you, but please make this right for you and don't just use random stuff that I have told you. And also make sure if you ask here some questions, sometimes it can make a little bit of a bug if you ask for articles and so on. If you simply type in news about prompting, news about Tesla, news about whatever, it will simply make the right move and it will trigger the workers one after another. Because our supervisor needs to give the right information to the right worker, and the first worker will give the information back that the search is done, and now we need to have a blog article. So make the prompt short and don't tell this thing exactly what it needs to do one after another. Just start with the first push in the right direction, news about whatever, and then you will get your article.